for this season.
Right.
Yeah, you should have access, Peter.
I should have access. Right, that's not up there, not there. There. So, well now. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Okay. As usual with these sessions, I'm skimming through. There is no substitute for reading them and reading them again, and then if needs be the day before the game, read them again. But this will give you the heads. There are not many significant changes, but I will run through each of the groups of competitions to give you an idea of what to expect. Let's go to that. And from the beginning. Right, here we go. League matches. We now have 20 divisions as opposed to 18 last year. So we continue to grow with the attendant problems of ground availability, but that's another day's work. Division 3 has been renamed the Premier Second Division. You may wonder why, I'm about to explain. We have reverted to 2 up, 2 down promotion and relegation. So the first and second team in Division 15 will replace the 7th and 8th in Division 14 and so on. However, there has been an issue with the old Division 3 for some time. It was made up entirely of second teams who did not want to be promoted to the Championship because then they'd be playing on the same day as their first teams. So in order to allow for that and to bring it to give an opportunity for teams to bypass it, we've renamed Division 3 the Premier Second. This means that any second team that comes in the first 2 in Division 4 will be promoted to the Premier Second and will replace the teams in 8th or possibly 7th. Any first team winning Division 4 will pass by the Premier Second and go into the Championship. And again, there would be a passing down from the Championship into Division 4. Any third team that wins Division 4 will stay there. That's nothing to do with anything that we'll have anything to do with, but I thought you would like to know. Division 20 is what was Division 17B last year, the development team league. This is comprised entirely of teams that contain a minimum of 5 youth players, with various regulations governing what they should do during the game. You will be delighted to know that you do not need to read the regulations of Division 20, nor their associated T20 Cup, the Minor 2 Cup, since part of the regulations now is that each team for the given day must provide a team manager who will act as umpire. So you may well be asked to umpire the final of the Minor 2 Cup, but you'll have no other involvement in any of these matches. Fielding circles now apply in all matches, League and T20 Cup. So if there isn't a fielding circle when you turn up, you need to get one organised. These are just a few words to let me know what I want to talk about. This has irritated me for some time. If we take a Premier Division match, 50 overs to be bowled in 3 hours, 20 minutes. If the team rushes through its overs and bowls them in 2 hours, 45 minutes, so 35 minutes before the break, The existing regulation made them go out again after a 10-minute interval, penalising effectively teams who were bowling their overs quickly. That never seemed to us to make sense. So what the regulation now says is, if all the overs of the first innings have been fully bowled, tea will be taken, regardless of whether it's within half an hour of the scheduled time or not. Back to what I regard as the old way of doing things, matches will only be refixed if both of them are washed out. So if Adamstown are playing Lucan and the match is washed out, you do not need to contemplate a refix until such time as you haven't played Lucan versus Adamstown. The immediate effect of that is we're going to have very few adult men's midweek games in the early part of the season. We're only really going to start to run into those when both league matches have not been played.
Sorry, Peter, is that for all divisions?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
It's a function of ground pressure, Matt.
Yeah, no, I understand it. I just want to make sure it's Premier League and everything.
And all league refixes may be reduced to 10 overs per side.
Sorry, Peter, can I just check something on either for you there? That the interval taking place after the first innings has been bowled.
Yes, sir.
Has that been changed in the regs?
Yes.
When was it changed?
Sometime during the winter.
Okay, because I'm
I'm
just
sorry
looking.
not to be more precise, but I remember writing it and I remember it being in there. So unless it's fallen out,
Well,
that is the regulation.
See,
I haven't got the regs in front of me, Willie. Otherwise, I have to get rid of the PowerPoint.
Okay. Sports Hub Senior League Cup Regulation version 2 issued yesterday.
It's definitely in there, Willie.
Says law 11.4, if the innings is completed prior to the scheduled time, the interval should take place immediately. If the innings at the batting side is completed more than 30 minutes prior to the schedule interval without the full quota of overs being bowled, a 10-minute break will occur and the batting innings will commence.
That's the one. That's what I've just said.
No, you
Will
said
you read
you
it
don't go
again
back
slowly?
out. So if the innings of the team batting first is completed more than 30 minutes prior to the scheduled interval.
Yep.
Sorry, that's without the full quota of overs. Sorry, I misread it. Yeah.
Go on to the next bit.
Time the interval may be altered. Let's say if the full quota was being then the innings scheduled. The innings is concluded more than 30 minutes prior. The interval should take place. Sorry, yeah. I was misreading. Yeah,
Yep,
thank you.
okay.
Very Peter.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I was just misreading that.
That's grand. This is the time to raise queries like that.
I think George has raised a very good point there in the chat, that runs into the tension of having clubs letting a situation where the teas aren't ready and the teas are expected to be taken, or the teas are ready at a stage where they're no longer required.
Well,
is that advisable?
It's hard to imagine that they'd be more than 40 minutes before the scheduled interval, and it will have been quite clear for some time that they were well ahead of the rate. So it won't come as a complete shock.
Can I just say something on that one, Peter?
Yes, George.
You're putting a lot of pressure on volunteers and clubs who prepare the meals or the teas on the day, and they are given they have a certain schedule in which they know they have to prepare them. So you're asking them to come maybe an hour earlier so to make sure that they are ready, even if it's 20 minutes before. I know it probably isn't a problem, but I'm just being the devil's advocate. I mean, regulations are great as long as everybody is catered for, if you pardon the pun.
Yep.
Peter,
but just a thought. Just a thought.
Is, if
I'll leave it out there.
Team is all out in 20 hours or 25 hours within 1.5 hours or 2 hours.
Well, it won't. Teas don't apply in T20s. So, And at this,
It's only
well,
gonna
and the
apply
way
if the
things are
five
going,
overs have been bowled.
tees are optional this season anyway. So, but I'm going on the assumption that this is for a, 50 over match.
Yeah, 50, 45 or 40.
Yeah.
Essentially,
The long term matches, the longer.
yes, that's all it will apply to.
Yeah.
I think
But,
all we can do is
just making the point. It's
Yeah,
just.
I think it's a fair point. All we can do, I think, is suck it and see. But it's always struck me as unfair that a team that bowls its overs quickly should be
I agree with that.
penalised.
I also agree with that.
Yeah. Let's suck it and see.
But
Absolutely.
is that not the same issue as the team who bowls the other team out are going to be penalised by? So if you bowl a team out in 25 overs, you go back out.
You do.
But if you bowl,
you derive the benefit of having bowled them out before they had a chance to score off the other 25 overs.
But if you go out, if you bowl your 50 overs in 2 hours, you take tea.
Yep.
Yeah.
Although I'd love to see somebody bowl 50 overs in 2 hours.
No, I'm just saying, you know what I mean, as an example, if someone bowls.
Yeah. Look, let's suck it and see.
All right.
If it's a problem at the end of the season, let us know and we'll rethink.
And also, I think all the clubs been informed about this anyway, so they should know beforehand if something like that happened. They'll be ready.
Okay. Summary of the. Oh, sorry. Last change. There will be a 45 feet long pop increase marking required in Premier League and Championship matches. That's 7.5 yards either side of centre stump. Now, quick run through. Premier Division 4 realistically hasn't changed. 50 overs per side, 10 overs per bowler. PTA of 200 minutes, 6 bonus runs per over short. Power plays are still 10, 30 and 10. 30 minutes grace before you start deducting overs. You then deduct 1 per lost 8 minutes in the first innings, 1 per lost 4 minutes in the second, down to a minimum of 20 overs per side. Free hit for no balls, leg side wides, and a maximum penalty time of 120 minutes. So no changes there. Divisions 5 to 9, 45 overs per side.
Sorry, Peter.
Hello.
Connor, I have one question. It mentioned 1 over per 8 minutes lost.
I'll go back up. Where's me back up button?
Over
lost per 8 minutes after the half hour's grace.
It's 2 overs.
And that's not
2
right.
overs,
No.
isn't it?
It's
1
2
over
overs
to
for
the
8.
side.
2 overs for 8 minutes, or 1 over for 4 minutes in the second innings.
The second innings, yeah.
Yes, 1 over per side, lost in 8 minutes.
Yeah, it doesn't say 1 over for side. It says 1
Okay,
over.
all right, okay. That's good. The same.
Divisions 5 to 9, 45 overs per side, 9 overs per bowler. Maximum penalty time has been reduced to 90 minutes in line with the laws of cricket. Divisions 5 to 7 only, Duckworth Lewis and mandatory scorers, and a PTA of 180 minutes, 6 runs per over short as 1 to 4. 1 over per side lost per 8 minutes, down to a minimum of 22 overs per side, and leg side wides.
Peter, just question there first. What happens if in Division 5 to 7 there's no umpires and only the scorers are there, and a scorer, you have one scorer who's competent, another scorer who's just there to score? What do they do there? Because it did happen last year.
Well, the regulations are the regulations, Peter. I don't think we can change them because umpires aren't appointed.
I know that, but I did a match in Trinity last year, and one team, I'm just saying, Trinity, the bowled 4 hours, took 4 hours to go through. So,
But the regulations are the regulations.
okay, I'm just saying.
Yep.
Clubs without
I hear what you're
umpires,
saying, but yeah, we can't.
clubs without umpires aren't following the regs. That's all I'll just say.
Yep.
Team should know it.
Yes. Peter Prasanna here. Just a question. Maximum penalty time 90 minutes. What does that actually mean? Sorry, it's a very neat.
If a player is off the field of play, his penalty time may not exceed 90 minutes. So if he's off for 100 minutes, his penalty time is capped at 90.
Okay, now I understand it. Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
Divisions 8. Hello. Divisions 8 and 9, we lose 1 over per 10 minutes. Sorry, 1 over per side for 10 minutes lost. 1 over per, for 5 minutes in the second innings. Minimum 22 overs per side. And because once you've set out on a Division 8 and 9 game, whatever you start with, you may not further reduce. The umpires and captains may agree a shortened match because of the weather forecast. So if you turn up at a game at for a 1 o'clock start, and it's quite clear from the weather forecast that it is likely to be lashing out of the heavens by 5 o'clock, the 2 umpires and captains may agree to play a shortened match that they can fit into the respective time available, but only because of the weather forecast. The fact that Joe has to go home at 5 o'clock is not a reason for playing a shortened match.
Sorry, Peter, just a quick one. If the 2 captains not agreed, what happened? If the umpires have made the decision, or all have to?
Then you try and play a 45 over match, and at 5 o'clock the heavens come down and you're all washed out and you go home.
So it has to be unanimous.
So you can only reduce it if there is agreement between the umpires and the captains, all 4 heads. Divisions 10 to 19 are 40 overs a side, 8 overs a bowler. The maximum penalty time is also 90 minutes in these leagues. If there's a pre-match delay, you use 1 over per side for each 10 minutes lost, down to a minimum of 20 overs per side. Again, the umpires and captains may agree a shortened match because of a weather forecast, and I strongly recommend before you leave home, have a look at whatever your weather app is and see what the likely weather for the day is. Remember, we are playing cricket 53 degrees north of the equator, and it's laws of cricket wides. Those are the league regulations. Any queries before I move on?
Sorry, Peter. So the pre-match delay 1 over lost per 10 minutes.
1 over from each side.
Yeah, from each side. So that regulation is like most of these league games, we won't have umpires, or many of them won't have umpires. So our captains should be following them, or?
Absolutely, yes. And that regulation about the agreeing to the shortening of the match, if there are no umpires, the captains may agree that between themselves.
Okay.
Providing they're doing so on the basis of a bad weather forecast. But if the sun's splitting the stones and they decide they're going to play 25 overs, they're likely to hear from the OCC.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Peter and Kieran here. Just wondering, you may deal with this later on, but just in terms of, is there any COVID specific regulations handling the ball, holding items of clothing?
Extremely good question, Kieran, because I've heard nothing handed down from on high, Sports Ireland or Cricket Ireland, about this. As they currently stand, the COVID regulations are are included in the regulations. But I've heard, unless Tony's heard something in recent times to counteract that.
Nothing. No changes come down to me.
Yep.
So we would assume
whatever
was in place last year remains in place to this year. Is that the way we we go on that assumption, or just assume that there's that handling the ball and all that
I think
is
you
okay?
have to, yes.
Peter,
No.
Peter, Mickey here. There are no COVID regulations in place, in regulations at the start of the season.
Oh,
The only change is that they're not in there. We took them out because there's been no guidance from above. That the only guidance as such is that there are no COVID restrictions. The only thing we've changed is that saliva on the ball is not allowed, but sweat on the ball is allowed.
Okay, and what about sorry to interrupt there, Vicky. What about you know, there was that confusion last year in 2020 when it was all 20 over stuff, and there was 2 games on, and players were not allowed to play more than 1 game in a single day. Then in 2021, I think there was clarifying email went out that in June when the season started. I think players could play more than 1 game in the end, but there was sort of a little bit of a delay on the clarification on it. Just to clarify it, maybe.
Kieran, it's Kevin Gallagher here. Obviously, I have an involvement in Cricket Leinster as well as anything else. There are no plans that we're aware of at this stage to implement any such regulations as per you've outlined. If that changes from Sport Ireland via Cricket Ireland to Cricket Leinster, all of the clubs and necessary other authorities, competition committees, LCU&SA, etc., will be notified. But as of at the moment, the only COVID-related regulation, and it's no longer a COVID-related regulation, is the one that Mickey has related, which is there is no saliva allowed on the cricket ball anymore. There's nothing else in place at the moment. If anything arrives, Cricket Leinster will advise. You can be sure of that.
Okay, grand. Okay, thank you.
Presumably that would also allow umpires to umpire 2 T20 games in a day if they so chose.
There are no restrictions.
Yeah, okay. I'll be back in touch with you, gentlemen.
Okay.
Leinster Senior Cup, again, is largely unchanged. 50 overs a side, 10 overs a bowler. PTA 200 minutes, and a bonus of 6 runs for each over short.
That's the Senior League Cup, is it?
Yes.
Because there's no Leinster Senior Cup. There's a Senior League Cup.
Senior League Cup. Power plays are 10, 30, 10. 1 over lost for each 8 minutes. And a minimum of 10 overs per side. Free hits for no balls, leg side wides. The maximum penalty time, they're 120 minutes in this competition. And the 45 foot long popping crease marking also applies here. So
Sorry, Peter. William here. Is that not a minimum of 5 overs per side?
Haven't got it in front of me, Willie, but if you'd be kind enough to check for me, I'd be grateful. I thought it was the same.
It's subject to blah, blah. The minimum length of a match should be 10 overs, 5 overs per side.
Sorry, my fault. Mea culpa. Sorry, I should have made one general plea to you all at the beginning. We have gone through these regulations over and over and over again and still keep spotting minor errors in them. If you spot anything that looks wrong, would you drop me an email? Mickey and I have read these bloody things. I dread to think how many times, and we've still missed things.
Sorry, can I just ask for clarification on that again? So the minimum is 5 overs per side, is that what you said?
That's what Willie read. Yeah.
Yeah.
5 overs per innings, yes. Yeah.
5 overs per innings is the minimum.
Thank you.
Regulation 13.6, length of innings.
Alan Murray Cup is being played on midweek evenings, 20 overs per side, 4 overs per bowler. PTA of 80 minutes, and again, 6-run penalty per over short. Power plays are at 1 power play of 6 overs, 1 power play of 14. 1 over lost per 8 minutes from each side. down to a minimum of 5 overs per side. 3 hits for no balls, leg side wides, and maximum penalty time for all T20 competitions is 35 minutes. And again, the 45 feet pop increase marking applies to this competition as well. Tulane and the YM Salva, no changes, 20 overs a side, 4 overs a bowler, PTA of 80 minutes, 6 runs per over short bowled. Power plays at 6 and 14. 1 over loss per 8 minutes, minimum 5 overs per side. BLS and mandatory scorers apply in this competition, the avoidance of confusion. 3 hits for no balls and leg side wides, as last year. Oh, sorry, maximum penalty time, 35 minutes. And the other Cups intermediate, Whelan Junior, Russell Court Minor and Adamstown. 20 overs a side, 4 overs a bowler. 5 overs per side is the minimum it can go down to. But the umpire, sorry, that's not right. I do apologise, that's wrong. It should say 10. It's a typo.
Yeah.
Umpires and captains may agree to shorten the match in advance of its starting down to either 10 or 15. We don't give you the options of anything else, so you can't have a 17 over match. But if it looks likely that you're not going to get a finish in the time available, then you may reduce to either 15 or 10. But 10 is the minimum. Laws of cricket wides. The maximum penalty time is 35 minutes. That's your lot. Unless you want to ask me any queries.
Peter, will you be able to share that PowerPoint presentation? It's just a nice synopsis. I know it's recording, but rather than if it's a PowerPoint, would that be able to be shared?
Is it just Siobhan who wants it?
I think could we put it up on the website?
Yeah.
To whom should I send it, Tony?
Owen or Matt, I suppose.
Yeah, one of us will pick it up.
Owen or Matt.
Right, okay, yep. Well, since Matt's here, I'll lumber in with it.
Not to be pedantic, but since there's been a couple of errors or mistypes, maybe they should be corrected before it's shared.
Yeah, I will. I'll correct it before I send it. Thanks, Will.
Sound.
George just put up a notice there.
It's just in answer to another question, are we not doing away with teas? It's optional.
It's optional.
I mean, I don't think Cricket Leinster can dictate that we do or do not provide teas. It's up to each club.
It would be really helpful to have a list of who is and who isn't.
Absolutely. Because, yes, because one of the issues, of course, was that you can't just sort of pick and choose what teams you're going to give teas to.
Nor can you pick and choose which umpires you're giving it to, George.
Oh, well, and that's the other thing. If you're giving it, you can't just give it to the umpires either. You give it to everybody or you give it to no one.
Why not? I mean, I know it's a plan in a club I'm associated with that they would provide teas for the umpires and scorers, but they're not providing it for the teams.
Well, apparently, according to the cricket Leinster, they say you cannot provide you cannot provide teas for just umpires and scorers. You have to provide it for everybody or nobody.
Okay, I didn't know that. Thank you.
No, that's what that was my reading of it. Somebody might correct me on that. I don't know.
I'm not sharing mine anyway with anyone.
Well, you're certainly not getting anywhere near my cream scones.
Well, I can safely say if the Hills stop doing the scones, and there'll be a riot.
And at the moment, the plan is that we will be doing teas. The scone maker may not be readily available this year, the regular scone maker, but if there are teas, there will be scones.
You'll just have to buy some from Super Value, George.
Oh, Jesus. You infidel. You're not allowed in the ground, Peter. Go away. Get out of it.
That's right. That's where they get them anyway.
Standards, please.
And you're not allowed either, Willie.
It's okay. Has anybody got any questions of Peter before we switch over?
Sorry, Paul Reynolds said, just on the subject of tees and us and umpires and scorers, I guess. So, the reason umpires were sort of excluded is because we all know if a club isn't doing tees for the players, but was to the umpires, you're going to get two of the worst sort of ham sandwiches ever. So it's just been agreed that umpires will just get an extra £5 fee, and then take your own food for the summer. Now, if you take your own food and you also get fed by the club as well,
you give the club the £5. Thank you.
Oh yeah,
well said, Paul. Great suggestion. I agree with that 100%.
Put the £5 behind the bar, surely.
No. You can put money behind the bar as well, but the £5 should be specifically for the food.
Okay.
Anyway.
So are we?
I jest.
Now, Kevin Reynolds, are you going to do the ladies now? Sorry, I beg your pardon, Kevin. Sorry.
Kevin Reynolds. There's probably something psychological in that because very growing to. I will, of course, go over all. Hold on 1 second. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, a very quick synopsis of Cricket Leinster women's regulations. So for Division 1, I'm going to go through this quite quickly because there's minimal changes here. Division 1 league matches are 20 overs per innings with a PKA of 75 minutes and a 10-minute interval between innings. 4 overs per bowler allocation. There's a power play block of 6 overs, which involves no more than 2 fielders outside the circle. Otherwise, for the rest of the innings, no more than 4 fielders outside the circle. There's 10 minutes grace time before a reduction in overs. At which stage, you then reduce by 2 overs per 7.5 minutes or 1 over per 3.75 minutes. So you're going to need a calculator at some stage. And there's a minimum of 12 overs per innings for a match. Why 12? That seems like a slightly odd figure, but it's not. And it's because umpires can agree before start to play a 20 over, a 16 over, or a 12 over match should the weather conditions indicate that play may be interrupted, including for poor light. Now, just to clarify on this, umpires cannot decide to play an 18 over match or a 14 over match. They can agree to play a 20, 16, or 12, just those 3 increments. This is exactly the same as it was last year. The DLS system is in place, as usual. There are 1-day wides and free hits. There's 1 bouncer allowed per over, and the highest run wins. Otherwise, the result is a tie. Has anyone got any questions, or would they like to make any comments in relation to the Division 1 league regulations?
Hi, Kevin. Actually, I just want to ask, what will be the bowling limit in case of 16 or 12 over match?
So that's listed in the regulations. It's essentially 1/5 of whatever number of overs the match is reduced to.
Okay.
Okay. And as mentioned by Peter in a different context, the pop increase for Division 1 league should be marked to a distance of 7.5 yards in either direction from middle stump. 7.5 is what's in the regulations, just for clarity's sake. Okay, and that's been agreed with the Grounds Committee for the season to come. So this is Division 1 league. We then have a Division 1 Cup, which is known as the Senior Cup. Which has very similar regulations. I'm going to fly through them. It's still 20 overs per innings. It's still a 75-minute PKA with a 10-minute interval. It's 4 overs per bowler, but for innings of rescheduled length of between 5 and 9 overs, no bowler may bowl more than 2 overs. This is as per Super Series and international cricket. There's a power play block of 6 overs with no more than 2 fielders outside the circle. Otherwise, no more than 4 outside the circle. There's 10 minutes grace before the reduction in overs. At that stage, you reduce by 2 overs per 7.5 minutes in the first innings, or 1 over per 3.5 minutes, 75 minutes in the second innings. And there's a minimum of 5 over innings per match. There's a DLS system is in place. The 1-day wides and free hits are in place. There's a 1 bouncer per over. The highest run wins, then fewest wickets lost. So if one team ends up on 120 for 6 and the team chasing ends up on 120 for 8, the team with 120 for 6 wins. If both teams end up on 120 for 6, then you have a bowl out to determine the winner. And the popping crease should be marked to 7.5 yards in either direction from middle stump. So just to clarify in relation to the Senior Cup, because it's a knockout competition, there is no option to reduce the match to 20, 16 or 12 overs beforehand. But in order to alleviate that, the matches are played at the height of summer, so there should be no issue with light, fingers crossed. Any questions on the Senior Cup before we progress?
Sorry, Kevin, if rain is raining all day and you've had are any of these matches refixed, or
if the match is called off in advance, they will be refixed. Yeah.
And if say it's raining that next time, hopefully it's not, is it straight to a bowl out, or?
I would imagine the competition committee will advise on that. You probably aren't. I wouldn't blame you in the least for this, but probably nobody on this call has looked in depth at the structure and length of time of the Senior Cup fixtures in relation to the number of weeks between them, etc. But without boring you to death, the competition is quite compact in its structure. So if we did have a problem like that, the women's competition will probably step in and make some recommendations in relation to what happens. It's a good question though, Peter. Absolutely. Happy enough? Okay, and then the last competition I want to talk to you about is the Pilkington Plate, which is a weekend competition, and it's a slightly longer lengthened match. It's 40 overs per innings. Now, those of you who've been around for a good few years may have thought of this as a 50-over match, 50-over competition. It's now reduced to 40 overs per innings. This is a change for 2022. So the PTA is a rather wonderful 152 minutes. There's a 30-minute interval between the innings. There's 8 overs per bowler, or pro rata if there's a reduction. There's a power play blocks. Power play 1 is 8 overs with no more than 2 fielders out. Power play 2 is 24 overs with no more than 4 fielders out. And power play 3 is a further 8 overs with no more than 5 fielders out. There's 30 minutes grace time before reduction in overs. And then you reduce by 2 overs per 7.6 minutes, or 1 over per 3.8 minutes. Minimum 20 overs per innings for a match. Now, I'm going to fess up and say, absolutely, I completely and utterly accept that from an umpire's point of view, having 7.6 minutes or 3.8 minutes or 7.5 in the other competitions, yes, it is a royal pain in the ass. I have no problem in admitting that, absolutely. The reason it is there is because these elite level competitions for women's cricket are designed to support the development of players into Super Series and international cricket, and therefore they mirror the international cricket regulations. So the benefit of that from an umpiring group is if you are regularly used to umpiring matches at this level and you are lucky enough to be appointed to a Super Series match or indeed any other international match, you will be used to the timeframes that are used for that match. It might be small enough comfort as you try and do your calculations. The DLS system is in place as for this competition also. 1-day wides and free hits, 2 bouncers per over because it's a 40-over competition. The highest run wins, otherwise it's a tie. And finally, last but not least, the popping crease should be marked at 7.5 yards in either direction from middle stump. So that is a summary of the 3 main competitions in women's cricket, the competitions to which umpires will be appointed. Does anybody have any questions about any of these competitions or anything else in relation to women's cricket? I can't see the chat, so if anybody's thrown anything into the chat, somebody might be good enough to just have a look and see is there anything there for me.
Sorry, Kevin. Just a question. What colour clothing do umpires need to wear in these matches?
Okay, well, I'll answer that by saying what colour is the cricket ball,
Yeah.
and then it's obviously up to the LCU&SA to decide after that. So in the senior cup, in the Division 1 T20 league, and in the senior cup, the cricket ball is pink, and in the Pilkington place, the cricket ball is white.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else got any questions?
I have no problem in making this rather beautiful looking presentation available to anyone who wants it afterwards. I'll send it on to Tony. No problem.
Okay, thanks, Kim.
Okay,
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Fergus here. What would happen if you went to a ground and the popping crease wasn't marked to 7.5 yards? And what's more, there was nobody there to mark it. Would you call the game off, or what would you advise?
No, what we refer you to do in that situation is, as long as you have a popping crease that allows you to play the match, what we would ask you to do is note that in your post-match report, and that will get fed back to Cricket Leinster, to the relevant competition committee and the grounds committee and whoever else needs to know about it, and it can be dealt with there. It's a good question though, Fergus, absolutely. We would generally say, and this would probably apply to all competition committees, and Peter can certainly something if he wants to talk about this. We wouldn't want a situation where a match is necessarily stopped on something that could be seen to be relatively cosmetic, if you know what I mean, from that point of view. If it's material to the operation of a cricket match, then obviously you can't proceed. But if it's cosmetic and you can proceed with the match otherwise, as a general rule, I think it would be fair to say that you could proceed with the match, but we would appreciate it if you report it afterwards so that we can try and help the club out to make sure that what needs to be in place is in place.
Okay, thank you.
If anything like that is put into a match report, it goes, like I read them all, and it goes to the secretary of the relevant committees, the women's committee of the OCC, and it also goes to Collie Byrne and the grounds committee.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks.
If I can ask a general question in relation to it, what's the thinking behind the change to 7.5 either direction? Is this an international standard, or
do you mean the minutes for over?
No, the 7.5 yards in either direction. Of
that.
Yeah.
It's
popping crease.
Do you want me to deal with that, Kevin?
Yeah, of course, Paul. Yeah, for absolutely.
Whatever. So the regulation before was bigger for elite cricket, and the groundsman didn't particularly like that, so there was just a bit of negotiation, sort of, and also it brings it in line with Super Series and IP cricket as well for this year. And for this is only for elite competitions, by the way. I can't remember if Peter says it, but for all other competitions below elite level, it's just laws of cricket for the popping crease length.
Thank you. Just a general question, because no doubt will be asked during the year.
Yeah, sorry, a quick one. Sorry on that. Some grounds you may have an artificial wicket that may not be 100% in line with the popping crease to the wicket that you're playing on. So in that scenario there, obviously the club may not want to mark a line going across in front of the popping crease or behind the popping crease. They'll be on the artificial wicket. I'm assuming it's okay, is, you know, if they drew a line left where the artificial wicket was, you know, with its normal, and continued it on to the distance of 7.5 yards.
Paul, you can have that one. Best of luck.
That's a good one, Joe. Actually, I've never.
I think ours is in line. I know in the past our artificial wicket used not be lined up 100% with the grass wicket, just because of where the
I know what you mean. Yeah. So the only problem purely from an umpiring perspective is
it for a runner?
Because if that's the strip next to it, you know, it's quite close. It might only be like a foot away. You're quite likely to get a decision where the line should be. But I also see what you're saying, and also I've never come across that. I don't know if others have, but yeah. Look, as an umpire, I wouldn't have a raging row with the groundsman because you're saying you want to deface the thing. Yeah, I'd probably just take a photo of it or whatever and report it in the grounds thing afterwards, to be honest.
That's fine, yeah.
Connor's raised a very good example in the chat there of something that I would describe as material to the match rather than cosmetic. He's asked if the fielding circle, the 23-meter circle for women or the 30-meter circle for men isn't in place, do you proceed with the match and then report it afterwards? The answer to that would be no, because you need to make a judgment call during the course of the match in relation to the fielding restrictions. So unless they're in a position to mark the fielding circle to enough of a situation that you as umpires can make a judgment call as to the location of the fielders, then you would not be able to proceed with the cricket match.
Okay. Anybody
One of
else?
the good reasons to be there 1 hour beforehand.
Anybody else got any questions? No? Well, I'd like to thank Peter and I'd like to thank Kevin for doing that this evening.